Good morning again, everyone. Thanks for joining our second day of the Wall of Wind RTMD EF facilities joint workshop. I'd like to use the first few minutes to go over the agenda of the second day. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, first, sorry for the noise on the background, to like our neighbors having a party today. Okay, so we are here. So we start with the roadmap of support provided to NHERI EF experimental facility users. And this will be a presentation from the Wall of Wind and also Lehigh facility. Then we have two technical presentations from Professors Tengu and Oh-Sung Kwan. They will give us updates about their ongoing projects on real-time hybrid simulation, following by Dr. Shirley Dyke, the director of the MEX network, who will be discussing the future and the needs of real-time hybrid simulation, especially in wind applications. So this is like a summary of today. Feel free to ask us questions if you have, and I guess we should be ready to start. Steve?
Thank you, Dr. Alawade. I introduced myself yesterday, but I am Stephen Diaz. I am the Site Operations Manager here at the Wall of Wind Experimental Facility. And today I will be sharing a roadmap of the support services that you can expect. Can everybody see my screen? And more specifically, is it in presentation mode?
No, now, yeah, now, yes.
Okay, and if I go through the slides, do they change?
Yeah, it works. It works.
Okay, yeah. Fantastic. Okay, I've pretty much introduced my title page. This is a roadmap of the support services that can be expected from the NHERI Wall of Wind Experimental Facility users, from us to you. The objective of the facility as part of NHERI is to enable a broadly inclusive external user base to undertake fundamental research. And this facility has excellent capability to assist in research of these various fields of basic science. It's not just a particular model or example, but basic research that really fulfills the advancing agenda of science, such as aerodynamics or fluid mechanics, principles of wind-induced vibrations or aeroelastic instability, stochastic processes and statistical methods can also be researched at our facility. We do a lot of work in structural reliability or the fragility of building systems as they are subjected to natural hazards. We have the capability for wind-driven rain to research rain infiltration, either by direct admittance or runoff and permeability. And then some capability that is more applicable to this particular workshop, aerodynamic hybrid simulation and nonlinear structural behavior under wind loading, similar to the research that is jointly being conducted between FIU and Lehigh University. And these are all areas of research that the Wall of Wind Experimental Facility is well equipped to help provide services for. Next few slides, I will go through a kind of a step-by-step process of what to expect through the development of a proposal, through the execution and testing process. So our mission is to support users from the beginning all the way through to the end. Initial contact, the PI would contact the director or the site operations manager, myself, with a test idea. Generally, Arindam gets the majority of the traffic for that, and he tends to forward it on to me. The idea then gets developed. I, as the site operations manager, will schedule a conference with the PI. Excuse me for a moment. And other members of our team here at the facility to discuss the testing needs and support the proposed research. And generally that leads to follow-up meetings, either monthly or bi-weekly, between the team and the PI to go over the details of the test, the proposed testing. From then we develop the proposal, the PI develops a preliminary plan and shares it with us here at the experimental facility for a feasibility assessment. And this is quite a crucial step in the process, in my opinion, and I would strongly urge you to contact us before laying out the proposal for feasibility. And a good example of this is a PI might be interested in taking pressure data on a building and then also load cells, maybe on the pilings of the building. And the nature of the pressure tests are typically pressure taps are installed on a facility, on a building, and we subject it to several wind speeds at many angles, every 5 degrees or 10 degrees for a full circle rotation of our turntable. And we can collect a lot of data like this. However, load cells, the nature of the testing is a little bit different. For each test of the load cell, we need to stop the fans completely and turn on the load cells and collect data with no load to establish a baseline, then turn on the fans, ramp them up to speed, and continue collecting data. And because of this, the testing parameters, the wall clock time for load cell data is 3 to 5 times longer than the pressure data, than the test for pressure data. And so if you try to combine load cell data and pressure data, then you really lose the opportunity to collect a full spectrum of pressure data. What we would recommend in a situation like this is to break it into 2 separate tests, one studying pressure data and one studying load data. And that's why it's very helpful to have us included on the front end before the proposal is even submitted, to ensure that the research needs match well with the effort that's being conducted here at the Wall of Wind. After that is done, I can provide you with a test timeline when we will be able to schedule you in our facility and an estimate of budgets, which I will talk about more in a few minutes at the end of this presentation. Then finally, the PI would submit the proposal to NSF. Concerning the PI structure and the submission to the National Science Foundation, the emphasis of the NHERI program is to have the resources available to all external users. That is, the Wall of Wind is not just the personal playground of the FIU staff, it's available to everybody. The PIs of the experimental facility are not required to be co-PIs on proposals to be submitted. It would be your submittal, and generally the Wall of Wind would provide a letter of support acknowledging your intention to use the facility that you could submit with your proposal to NSF. However, if their intellectual input is needed, they have domain expertise in wind engineering, then they are available to participate and be co-PIs on your proposal as well. That would be a case-by-case basis that would have to be discussed individually with the PIs of the facility. So again, they are not required to be on any submission, and at the same time, they are not excluded from being PIs on the proposal. But whether they are or not, me and the other staff here at the experimental facility will provide all necessary services to the users through the completion of the project. Of special note, users are able to, and indeed encouraged, to use more than one experimental facility at the same time. This workshop highlights a prime example of that with the collaborative work that's being done between FIU and Lehigh University. And then the user submits the proposal directly to the NSF. It does not go through the facility. It's direct with any letter of support that may be received from the facility. Once the award has been granted, the PI is notified and then informs me of the project award, and we begin the real work. First thing we do is contact the network coordination office and fill out some of their paperwork and post the nature of the test on the website. The network coordination office has a website that tracks all upcoming testing and experiments. And this is beneficial to the wider NHERI community so that potential other principal investigators can see what's coming up, what's expected at the facility, so that they don't duplicate efforts, or if they have the opportunity for a payload project, or possibly reuse the data that will be generated in your test. So it's good to have everything in one repository at a central location at the network coordination office for all involved parties. Then a service agreement, our typical contract, is signed between the principal investigator of the experiment and the facility here in FIU. And it would be incumbent on the investigator to create a folder on the design safe system for exchanging data back and forth between the PI and the facility. Project kicks off. I would schedule the test, give you the opportunity to review safety information and user training. This is not necessarily relevant in a post-COVID world, but if you are expecting to travel to the facility and be involved in the instrumentation and development of the project hands-on, then this would be required. And then the PI, along with the staff here at the Wall of Wind, would develop very detailed test protocols so that when we sit down in the chair and turn on the fans, we know what speeds we're offering at, which wind directions, and we know what we're going to do on a minute-by-minute basis as we go through the test day. In setting up the test, the PI and the facility team work on the model design and fabrication. We tend to be heavily involved in the design. Typically, the PI is responsible for the design, but it gets performed by graduate students who tend to lack experience in robust design. So we often work with you guys to create a specimen or experiment that is able to mount to our turntable and has correct brackets and all necessary details of the design of the experiment and fabrication. So in fabrication, either it can be built by you and shipped to us. We can construct it on site. Typically, they're sent to us, but it falls upon the staff here to perform the instrumentation, the pressure taps, strain gauges, load cells, things of this nature, and the installation and mounting on the turntable and setting up the facility for testing. On runtime, when we actually turn on the fans, we operate the tunnel and acquire data. This is the boring part of it. If we have done our homework ahead of time, this is all fairly smooth. Then in real time, we upload the data to the design safe folder where it can be viewed. We have a telepresence where the PIs can view the testing remotely through our high definition cameras. And then after the test, we upload any other relevant test documents and reports to the design safe website. We take apart the test setup and return any components that are necessary back to the PIs. One thing I do want to highlight in this stage is there is there we go. A lot of involvement from the EF staff at several projects, at several points along the project. And I ask that you consider this very carefully when you are drafting a proposal so that the resources are available to facilitate the staff here in their efforts before and after the test, not just during the test time itself. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the service descriptions and how we categorize the services and budget them for the cost structure. The services of the facility are generally broken up into 3 categories: pre-testing, runtime, and post-testing. Services in the pre-testing category would include the aforementioned test planning, any assistance with the design or construction and instrumentation of the models, our efforts on installing it on the turntables. It's necessary for us to prepare the wind tunnel in some way, be the surface roughness elements or setting up the water injection models for wind-driven rain. The model conditioning, we often have to do a shakedown, if you will. We set everything up and then do a preliminary test to make sure that all the instruments are reading correctly and everything is working as expected. We might need a little bit of time to make adjustments on the fly. For actual testing, once we have all that preliminary processes worked out, we turn on the fans and run. This is all billed as runtime, and it involves when the tunnel is operational, the fans are on, and we're collecting data. This is when we would generate rain or collect any recording and any model reconfiguration that has to go on during the test. For example, if you're testing a rooftop structure and we have to stop the testing and go make a change to the model in real time and then resume testing, that's included in the testing rates for actual test time. And finally, post-test activities include the removal and disassembly of the specimen from the turntable, any general data processing activities we have to undertake, archiving and storing data, and then finalizing the report writing and uploading all these things to design safe or sending them directly back to the PIs. So given the aforementioned categories of services that we provide, this is a table of the rates for those services. The budget of the facility includes basic support for staff salaries, component upgrades. We have a list of instrumentations that we maintain, a list of instruments that we maintain, but for any individual proposal that may need specific types of instruments or other forms of support, then that needs to be included in the proposal. When you come up with a budget, I would encourage you to add a contingency of maybe 10 to 20% to allow for unforeseen circumstances if we have to spend more days adjusting something or adding special instrumentation of this nature. Also, lead time is very important. We need to get quotes and purchase instrumentation, have them shipped here, and then installed on the model. Upon request, the PI will provide users with specific guidance for the budget, and we can review your budget prior to submission. Like I said, this is not mandatory, but it's highly recommended. It can make the process go much more smoothly and help align expectations with the feasibility and capability here of the facility, and ensure that the research that is being performed meets high NSF standards and is also, it meets what is expected instead of having to be pared down from an unrealistic expectation to begin with. Again, at the bottom of the screen, the costs for pre-test, test, and post-test days are shown. They're all billed in units of full days. So we would have 1 or 2 or 3 days of pre-test, 1 or 2 or 3 days of runtime, and then post-test activities as required. And that is the end of my presentation. I guess I could take a few questions if there are any. And that should leave us some time for Lehigh to give an overview of their services as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve, very much. Is there any question before we move to chat? Okay. It's time now for Lehigh facility. Mr. Chad Costco will give us an overview also about the roadmap of support from their facility. Chad, it's all yours.
Thank you. Are you able to see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Again, my name is Chad Cusco. I'm the site operations manager of the NHERI Lehigh facility. The presentation will just include a brief discussion on opportunities for utilization of our site, and also the site support roadmap for supporting PIs and researchers throughout the project process. I just wanted to note that the facilities are available for utilization of projects funded through various sources. So the NSF, a lot of our projects come through NSF, and we have a specific funding process for those projects. But non-NSF projects can also be brought into the site and tested at the facility. And really the impact is just the amount of budget that's required to be picked up by non-NSF projects versus NSF projects. So if you do have an idea, but you don't have NSF funding and you think NHERI Lehigh might be the right fit, just please contact us. We can kind of explain the budget breakdown structure accordingly, and we'd be happy to look at that for you in addition to all NSF projects. So we look at the roadmap starting at the user proposal preparation step and working all the way through training the researchers, coming into the laboratory, constructing, instrumenting, testing, and then uploading raw data and demolishing the specimen. If you focus on the user proposal stage, there's really 2 steps: the pre-proposal and the proposal writing stage of the process. As Steve noted for FIU, I would just emphasize the most important thing is just contact us as early as you can. You can reach out to me directly. We'll probably get Leanne Cow, our research engineer, involved in a process, and depending on the complexity of it, we would get others, perhaps the PI, co-PI, or lab operations manager or IT manager, so that we can all understand what the vision is and can weigh in at the proposal stage to help arm you with the best possible information for a successful proposal. There are some things early on that we'd ask you to consider. What's your idea? Does it fit within what we can technically do? Do we have the necessary equipment? What solicitation are you proposing for, so we can understand how to budget this and help you, minimize the cost that you would have to ask for? And then what additional information would you have available that might be of interest to us as a site? We do have a checklist, questions for pre-proposal stage, and a checklist for proposal prep on our website at the NHERI Lehigh Design Safe site. So if you're on that site and go to the Lehigh page, you'll have access to these, and it'll just kind of help you walk through questions that you want to ask yourself, and hopefully have some information for when you contact us, and it'll just help us, again, pull together the best possible support as possible. With respect to proposal writing, I reference you to the NSF proposal and award policies and procedures guide. We also have an extensive NHERI Lehigh facility users guide on our website, which will walk you through equipment availability, use rates, etc. If you have any questions on that, if you're getting into a specific section for proposal, feel free to reach out to me, and we can get those questions addressed. Other information that would be helpful during this stage: research plan, again, what facilities, equipment would be needed, a rough idea of a schedule where we fit year 1, year 2, year 3 of your process, so we can kind of look at what's already committed at our site, what other proposals are potentially out there, just so we understand if all these came through or if certain ones came through, how it would impact the ability to service your project. Budget is developed and more refined at this point, and then also the data management plan. The research plan is really what you envision and what you want to do. The facility, equipment, other resources, what's required from our facility. Do we have those resources? And are there additional Atlas resources? As we overviewed yesterday, NHERI Lehigh's is structured within the Atlas Engineering Research Center. So we have the large scale structural facility that is the Atlas Center. And then NHERI Lehigh is a component and a program that operates within it. So we do have additional resources that are non-NHERI that we might be able to apply to this for nominal use fees, and which would help the scheduling or technical success of a project. Scheduling, as we talked about earlier, helps us with both equipment availability, instrumentation availability, space availability. The lab is only so big, so we have to make sure we have projects moving through. And then also the physical labor resource of our staff. Budgetarily, there are costs that qualify for coverage through our NHERI Lehigh maintenance and operations budget. And then there's ones that the NSF funded project would pick up, or the project funded by other sources. Again, all non-NSF projects are responsible for all costs associated with the budget that would come into Lehigh. On our NHERI Lehigh website, there is a rate schedule, both for NSF funded and non-NSF funded projects. So this would give you an idea of what the equipment may cost, or personnel rates. And there's also an outline of the responsibility of costs. So if you look at what steps come into a project, it'll give you an idea of which ones you may be responsible for. Generally, anything related to the specific specimen itself, construction of the specimen, demolition of the specimen, unique fixturing for specimens, those are borne by the project and the PIs, along with instrumentation. Anything else, planning, hydraulics, moving actuators in place, conducting testing, data acquisition during testing, those are borne by our operations and maintenance budget. But again, contact us. I'll look at it. Liang will look at it. We'll get budgetary questions addressed and back to you so you can plan accordingly. And finally, data management plan. What's your idea for data management and sharing? We do have examples on our website also that you can use as a reference point for using our facility. And the rest of the project, once the project gets funded, we start with the post-award stage. So there is compliance documentation forms, as Steve noted, that we want to just take a look at. It's really a lot of stuff. If you contacted us early and we looked through most of these things before, it's really more a formality just to make sure we're all on the same page now that the awards come in. There's also a site utilization form that we will complete and work with the NCO on. I'm not going to go into too much detail. It's the typical stuff you would expect: safety, risk, scope, equipment usage, data sharing, roles and responsibilities. Where are we responsible? Where are you responsible for as a researcher? There is researcher training. We can bring you on site for in advance if you want to come on site for the testing. Depending on the steps in the process, we can do the researcher training then. We can bring you in before, well in advance of that, so you have a better idea of the facility and what's expected. But there would be some component of researcher training conducted. Experimental test planning, schedule and testing. We start just more laying out the actual nuts and bolts of what's going to be needed to get the specimen and set up, constructed and tested and taken out. We'll work with the Atlas staff because, again, within the facility itself, there's Atlas projects that are non-NHERI. There are NHERI projects, so we're really balancing our resources amongst all the projects in the laboratory. Execution of testing, Our staff will be with you along the process, running the equipment, working with you throughout the day of testing and up to it, and also following up. And then post data archiving, our IT manager will help you with it. The PI will be responsible for uploading the data, but we'll provide guidance of steps of what need to be done and answer questions for you as part of the structuring process, just to make sure it's done to fulfill our requirements in NHERI. So that's about it. Are there any questions I could address at this time? All right, then thank you. If you have any follow-up questions after today, feel free to send me an email. My email address is chk205@lehigh.edu. Thank you.